One of the most common mistakes that clients in India make is that they will commit to an overseas property before getting the right advice on the Indian regulatory framework. Now, I've actually got a client he approached us. He has acquired a property in Dubai. He liked the property and he's committed to buying the property, which is great. He has actually chosen to go through the finance route. He has gotten finance from a Dubai lending institution. Now, that sounds really good because once that prospect is put in front of you, you think, oh, great, I'll borrow, say, 50 or 60%. Then the rent that I get will easily cover my mortgage repayment. So effectively, I've got a tenant who's paying off my property. So yes, great concept and it works really well.
Welcome to Own the World podcast with Abhii Dabas, powered by Intric Global.
There are roughly 35 million people of Indian origin living outside India. And somewhere in that number is one of the most misread pools of private capital in the world. The assumption is that it flows one way, back home into an apartment in Mumbai or a plot in Gurgaon. That stopped being the whole story a while ago. The Indian family is now buying in Dubai, London, Lisbon, and Singapore. And it is buying for reasons that have very little to do with yield. Welcome to Own the World, the show for investors who refuse to be limited by geography. I am Abhii Dabas. My guest today spends his working life with those families. Yudhi Mapara is an associate director, private clients at Henley and Partners. With more than 23 years of experience across international real estate and global investment markets, he has advised investors, entrepreneurs, family offices, and private clients throughout Australia, the UK, Southeast Asia, and China on international diversification and cross-border opportunities. Drawing on extensive experience working with globally mobile families, Yudhi specializes in helping high and ultra-high net worth individuals develop long-term strategies that integrate residence and citizenship planning with wealth preservation, business expansion, education planning, succession planning, and global mobility objectives. We are going to talk about what is really driving the global Indian family right now, where the money is going, and the structuring mistakes that cost people years to unwind. Yudhi, welcome to Own the World.
Thank you, Abhi. Pleasure to be here.
When someone walks into your office in Mumbai or Delhi today, who are they? And what has changed about the person over the last 5 years?
So typically our clients are high net worth and ultra high net worth Indians. And how things have changed over the last couple of years is that the conversations have become a lot more deliberate. So clients have become more proactive. Earlier, clients would come to us when an overseas opportunity arose, but nowadays that's no longer the case. Clients are planning well in advance. They're asking how to create options for their children and diversify where they live and invest.
Right. And the old picture is a successful NRI sending money back to India. How much of that picture is still accurate?
Global Indian is no longer the traditional NRI. Yes. So now the global Indian, they comprise more entrepreneurs, first generation wealth creators. And these Indians are definitely investing in India, but their outlook has expanded. So they do see global mobility as part of overall succession planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I come to India, I just am amazed at the pace of growth. And I'm sure that number of millionaires in India is growing rapidly as well. How much of this is a founder or first generation wealth story versus family businesses that have been around for decades?
So this is, I would say, Abhi, this is a fairly even split. So we're seeing interest across all demographics. I can't say that there is a particular demographic that stands out over the other. So to give you an example, I'm currently in talks with a few different families. And one of the families, they are a large business. They've got an export business, which has been, I think this is the third or the fourth generation. And simultaneously, I'm also dealing with a startup founder. His company has just gone public for an astronomical amount. He started the company not that long ago. So yes, we are dealing with clients from all demographics currently. And it's just amazing how many different, I'm just finding out so much more about how wealth is being created. These are avenues that I'm finding out every day, and they're just surprising that how people are just doing so well in India at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely the most exciting place to be, I would say, in the world right now. We work a lot with real estate developers, and all the developers that I speak with, they always ask me the same question. How do we target the Indian buyer? Because there's such vibrance in that economy, and definitely the number of millionaires is growing, I think, more rapidly than anywhere in the world. And I'm sure not enough data is available, and otherwise the number would truly be staggering as well. So tell me, Yudhi, what's the age profile for these high net worth and ultra high net worth clients?
Yes, the first generation entrepreneurs, a lot of the tech ultra high net worth clients that we deal with typically are under 45. So this is a demographic that we've seen massive growth in India, particularly over the last couple of years. And the way they invest or their outlook is somewhat different to the traditional ultra high net worth family owner who is, say, the patriarch who is 60 plus. So how that's changed is that the under 45 client thinks in terms of opportunity and growth. They're a little bit more aggressive in their thinking, whereas the older patriarch, with the legacy family business, their thinking is more around wealth preservation and continuing that legacy. So both the groups ultimately have the same goal. They're both seeking financial resilience, but their approach is slightly different.
Right. And so when a family first comes to you, what do they say they want? I see now young couples from India moving to places like Thailand for lifestyle purposes, or sometimes even cost of living purposes. And then, of course, you find Indian families in places like Portugal. You'll find people in Australia. And of course, the US has always been a very popular market. So I'm always fascinated by what's truly driving them. So do you feel there's a difference between what clients think they want when they first speak to you, and by the time you have your second or third conversation, do you uncover something completely different?
Yes, that is the case. So nowadays, information is everywhere. Social media, you would know, Instagram, Facebook, they're buzzing with all these ads that say buy a property and secure residency. So when clients first come to us, they want a fairly simple solution. They're like, oh, just help me buy this property and get residency. What's the simplest way to do it? But after the second, third conversation, once we've delved a little bit more, we realized that the real discussion is not just a product discussion. It's more about getting the strategy right for the client to achieve their overall goal.
Right. And I mean, knowing Asian families, and we interact with a lot of high net worth and ultra high net worth families and family offices, I know that education is always at the heart of every conversation.
It is.
I'm sure the same applies for Indian families as well. So tell me, is the US still the destination most Indian families want to go to, or do you see any new trends developing, and do you see some new corridors coming up?
Sure. US continues to be the first choice for most Indian families, particularly those that are looking for the traditional academic pathways like medicine and law and finance. So that fundamentally hasn't changed. But where the market has evolved is that parents and students nowadays are more aware. So they're now asking us where a particular field is taught best. So for example, we're seeing growing interest in countries like Switzerland for hospitality and hotel management. Italy is popular for those who want a career in fashion and design. And there are other specialized education hubs across Europe that are generating more and more interest. But in saying that, the US is still, I would say in India, by far the most, is the preferred choice.
Right. And considering how fast the economy is growing, and India is probably the fastest growing large economy in the world right now. So is there a specific trigger that you see that drives these families to start considering, overseas destinations to move or for residency, or is it a combination of factors?
So thankfully, one of the things that we're seeing, Abhi, is that there's not a specific trigger that's starting these conversations. Our clients have become less and less reactive. They've become way more proactive. So planning has come into it a lot. When they do come to us, sometimes they're seeking multiple strategies. So they are looking at it more from a planning point of view rather than say their child gets into a university. That's not the time when they approach us. So thankfully, and I think this is the right way to go. So the triggers are becoming fewer and fewer, and it's becoming more about getting the entire strategy right from the start.
Interesting. One of the sort of push factors that we see with clients in, say, Western Europe is usually tax. Would you say for India, tax is also one of the driving factors, or is it not something that people consider?
Tax is certainly a consideration, but it's rarely the first reason that the client starts the journey. So education and opportunities for their children is probably number one here in India, followed by business expansion and creating optionality. These conversations are the ones that are leading the way. Tax obviously becomes part of overall structuring, but that is not the sole objective. The other thing also to mention here, Abhi, is that tax residency a lot of the times does not apply to our clients, because a lot of our clients are not looking at leaving India and not looking at spending the requisite amount of time in a tax-friendly jurisdiction. They're happy to continue their business in India or their jobs here in India. They're looking at this more from an optionality point of view. So for those families or for those clients, tax doesn't come into the equation at all, because
That's
their
very
tax residency will continue to remain India.
Very interesting. Yeah, so it's more of a back pocket option and just good to have option, and maybe ease of travel and just lifestyle to have some presence in multiple jurisdictions. That sounds a lot like what I've always tried to do. So I can relate to that. Okay, we'll leave education at this point because we have another episode coming up with the Henley and Partners team on education. So let's talk about other things. I want to understand, where the capital is actually moving. So tell me, the India to UAE corridor. Now that's been popular for the longest time. I've been seeing that for the last 25 or more years, and definitely accelerated over the last few years. What is behind that? And why are Indian families still looking at Lisbon or say the Algarve? And what are they actually buying there?
Clients nowadays are no longer looking at just the one destination to tick all their boxes or to fulfill all their requirements. They're choosing different jurisdictions based on different objectives. So you mentioned Dubai, and that is correct. It continues to attract Indian families. There are quite a few factors. Proximity, one of the ones that you mentioned, that's definitely true. There's a sense of familiarity with Dubai as well. Everyone here knows someone or the other who is in Dubai, which is not seen as being a huge issue. Culturally, Dubai and India are quite close as well. But the ease of doing business is probably one of the reasons in the recent past that Dubai has become even more popular. So Dubai has become much more than just a tax story currently. It's become business expansion is generally the prime motive. Portugal has now become a lifestyle destination, but it is part of broader European planning for Indian families. So that's where Portugal has become the most popular. The investment route, as you know, property now no longer forms part of the Portugal permanent residence program, but the investment route that Indians are very familiar with, they're very comfortable with. They invest in funds in India in a big way. So the fund investment route is something that Indians are very, very comfortable with. So the property discussion and the residency discussion, they are quite separate, but Portugal has become a very big part of the residency story in India, particularly.
Right. And you don't see much has changed even after the 5-year threshold has now moved to 10 years. It's still very popular?
It is still popular because a lot of Indians, they're not necessarily looking for another passport, because in India, you cannot retain your Indian passport and get an additional passport. So the minute you obtain a different passport, you have to relinquish your Indian one. So citizenship for a lot of families is not the ultimate goal. It's more about the investment option. And because of that, the 5 to 10 years change, yes, that did create a bit of conversation when it happened, but we haven't really seen any decline or any change in the interest in the program itself.
Right. And if I remember correctly, Portugal also does not have a very strict minimum stay requirement. I believe it's 7 days every year or something. So it's
Correct.
easier to deal with as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's the only program in Europe where you don't have to physically relocate to that country to obtain the passport.
Yeah, I think the funds are becoming very popular. We are working with some interesting funds as well. And I was surprised when we were speaking with our Portuguese partners, and they mentioned some of their most prolific clients are actually from India.
Yes.
And well, that's another story right there. But yeah, it seems like Portugal is still hugely popular with Indian citizens. So now tell me, where does property purchase sit in the sequence? Now, you mentioned earlier, property is a separate decision. It's not tied in with the residency decision. So I mean, we obviously manage a lot of real assets. So we always think of what drives a buyer, whether it's lifestyle or education or diversification, or as we say, doomsday planning or whatever else it might be. But somewhere people have to decide, where property comes in, because they obviously want a place of their own. They want to live, spend some time during the year in that destination. In your experience, how do families decide on property?
So in most cases, the residency strategy does come first and the property follows. Now, in the case like Portugal, where property is not a qualifying investment, we are finding that clients are still investing in property, but they're doing it from their own personal point of view, either for personal use or the best investment. But that is separate to the residency decision. Whereas when clients are looking at, say, a jurisdiction like a Greece or a Malta or a Latvia, where property acquisition is a pathway to residency, the first decision is about choosing the residency strategy, getting that correct. And then the property decision, we find it just flows quite naturally from there.
Yeah, interesting. And in some cases, savvy investors try to combine all of them, right? So Dubai would give you the residence. It also gives you the high yields. It also gives you the lifestyle. And as you said, business opportunities. Nothing competes with the Dubai energy and hustle. We have a team in Dubai and we always talk about that as well. So
yes,
yeah, savvy investors. And I remember you mentioning earlier as well how smart investors can find a way to combine all of these. Let's talk about the mistakes. I always talk about mistakes. I always say I've probably made more investment mistakes, especially cross-border investment mistakes, than anyone I know. So what's the most common mistake that you see? The one that you have watched play out more than once?
Yes, this is unfortunate, but one of the most common mistakes that clients from India make is that they will commit to an overseas property before getting the right advice on the Indian regulatory framework. Now, I've actually got a client who he approached us probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. He has acquired a property in Dubai and he wanted us to help him with his golden visa application, which, we're obviously glad to do. But, once we delved a little bit further, we realized that he has bought the property from a Dubai developer who markets themselves quite heavily in India. And he has gone to the exhibition and he liked the property and he's committed to buying the property, which is great. But he has actually chosen to go through the finance route, and he has he's gotten finance from a Dubai lending institution. Now that sounds really good because once that prospect is put in front of you, you think, oh great, I'll borrow say 50 or 60%. Then the rent that I get will easily cover my mortgage repayment. So effectively, I've got a tenant who's paying off my property. So yes, great concept, and it works really well, except under FEMA. And FEMA is the Indian Foreign Exchange Management Act, and it's quite strict and it's quite black and white. FEMA does not allow Indian tax residents to borrow from international financial institutions. So what this client has done unknowingly is he is now in serious breach of FEMA laws, which is not really a situation that I would want to find myself in. And we've noticed that he's not a one-off. This is something that is happening quite regularly. So that is rather unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we always talk about education being such an important piece in cross-border investments. You have to understand the regulations. You have to understand everything, not only in terms of, say, capital controls or how to finance the property, but tax residence, even stamp duty, understand the currency risks as well. And that's something that people don't quite appreciate when they just look at brochures, or like you said, in this case, somebody who just went to a property exhibition and just fell in love with the property. So yeah, so something to keep in mind. Educate yourself. There are a lot of things to consider, and it's not that complicated. But once you have a clear checklist, and if you work with experts, that should be pretty straightforward. Tell me, how often does someone come to you after they've already bought? And then how much harder is the problem to solve at that point?
Yeah. So a few years ago, it was happening a lot. People were buying first and then coming to us, but that is slowly changing. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a bit too slow. And for some clients, it is a little bit too late, because if you have executed contracts, if finance has been arranged, what you're trying to do is you're trying to solve a complex compliance issue retrospectively. And that is significantly more difficult.
Right. And so if someone's listening right now and they are, say, about 6 months away from making this decision, what should they do first?
My advice is fairly straightforward. It's fairly simple. I would say don't start this journey by looking at an investment, a particular investment, and the ROI. A lot of our clients do focus on the ROI. I'd say start by defining your family's long-term objectives. Once you know where you want to be in 5, 10 years, I think the right residency strategy and the investment decision, I think they just tend to follow naturally. So the thing to remember here is that global mobility is fundamentally about optionality. It's not about relocation. It's not about ROI on the investment. And the most successful outcomes are generally reached from planning well before capital is deployed, not after.
Right. That sounds like my life's mantra. Optionality. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So tell me now, we talked about Dubai, we talked about Portugal. Do you see any destinations that are becoming increasingly popular with Indian investors and Indian families? And do you see, say, over the next 5 years, places that Indian families are moving to or investing in that would surprise people? I mean, people would not normally think about these markets, though Dubai is a no-brainer. Everyone understands that. But do you see any interesting, unusual destinations?
I do. So like you mentioned, Dubai is the no-brainer. The US also is a no-brainer for reasons we've discussed. And, what we'll discuss more in our education podcast in the future. What has really surprised me is the retirement market in India. So typically you're above 55, empty nester, children have moved out, and now they're no longer happy to just sort of keep staying in their family home. They're looking at options. The Thailand long-term resident visa, particularly under the wealthy pensioner category, is getting a lot of interest in India. People are asking about places like Mauritius or Malaysia even, with close proximity to India, but destinations that are gaining momentum with the retiree market. So I think that is a shift that I thought was unexpected, and I didn't really see it coming because when we think about mobility and opportunity, we normally associate it with young families and opportunity. But retirees are now increasingly looking at, I think they're becoming younger as well. People are retiring in their mid-50s, late 50s. They're still quite active. So they're keen to explore options of where they can live and retire.
Very interesting. I would say I'm not surprised because some of the most fascinating conversations I've had over the last 12 to 24 months are about retirement, because that's the one time that people don't think about deals. They don't think about a lot of the practical stuff, and they just finally want to do the things that give them joy.
Correct.
And there are so many interesting destinations that I've come across where people just are having conversations about, should I move to Japan? Should I move to Thailand, like you mentioned? People, Bali, of course. There are things that people have always wanted to do and they couldn't do it because, say, there weren't enough jobs or there were not enough business opportunities or it wasn't much of an education hub. And that's what we find so fascinating at Intric, how people can move anywhere. And that's why we say own the world, because, the world is your oyster. So thank you so much, Yudhi, for your time. And if you want to find Yudhi, you can find him on LinkedIn. And of course, as Yudhi mentioned, if you are looking to plan residence or plan a passport in another country, then you should work with experts like Yudhi and Henley and Partners. There are some interesting initiatives coming up. Intric and Henley and Partners together are coming up with a very interesting report on the global Indian family, something you should look out for. And it's been a pleasure, Yudhi. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abhii. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The world's best opportunities do not stop at borders. Subscribe to Own the World. Share this episode and stay informed on global investing and cross-border real estate.